Ever heard of a great military leader being defeated by rabbits? No, I'm not talking about some weird fever dream Bugs Bunny situation. History, my friends, is a wild ride full of bizarre twists, turns, and the occasional exploding whale. Join us as we dive headfirst into some of the most ridiculous, unbelievable, and yet completely true historical events you probably never learned about in school. Buckle up, because things are about to get totally bizarre. But before we get into explosions and rabbits, let's talk about the war that made headlines and left the world scratching its head. Yes, folks, it's time to discuss the infamous Great Emu War of 1932. Imagine this: Australia, a country known for its deadly wildlife, declares war on birds. And not just any birds, but emus, those tall, flightless, and surprisingly speedy creatures. Picture this: post-World War I, Australian farmers were struggling with a plague of emus devouring their crops. The solution? Send in the military. Armed with machine guns and a determination to protect their wheat, the soldiers faced off against the emu invasion. But here's the kicker: those emus were no pushovers. They outran the soldiers, dodged bullets, and even seemed to mock their human adversaries. In a twist of fate that could only come from the annals of history, the emus won. The military retreated, and Australia was left to deal with an unstoppable force of feathery foes. So the next time you hear about the Great Emu War, remember, never underestimate an emu. They're not just birds, they're legends. And now, with our emu escapade fresh in our minds, let's move on to another historical oddity that is almost like a real-life musical. Stay tuned. Now, let's lace up our boots and step into a tale that dances on the edge of the bizarre and the macabre. Picture this: the year is 1518 and the city of Strasbourg is besieged not by soldiers or emus, but by an inexplicable, unstoppable force. A plague. Of dancing. Yep. The dancing plague of 1518. It all began with a woman named Frau Troffea, who stepped into the streets and started to dance. She danced without rest, without reason, and soon others joined her. Within a week, dozens were dancing uncontrollably, and by the month's end, the number had swelled to hundreds. The city was gripped by a feverish rhythm, as people danced themselves to exhaustion, injury, and even death. The authorities, baffled and desperate, tried everything from musicians to exorcisms, but the dancing continued. Was it mass hysteria, a curse, or perhaps a toxin in the bread? The true cause remains shrouded in mystery, leaving us to wonder what could drive an entire community to dance on the edge of oblivion. So the next time you feel the urge to dance, remember the strange and eerie tale of Strasbourg's footloose and plague-ridden. And now let's step away from this haunting historical dance before we get blisters on our feet. As we transition from the eerie spectacle of the dancing plague, prepare yourselves for a tale that is equally bizarre, but far more explosive. The year is 1970, and the location is Florence, Oregon. What happened here is a story so unbelievable that it has become the stuff of legend. On November 12th, a massive dead sperm whale washed ashore. The whale, weighing an astonishing 8 tons, posed a significant problem for the local authorities. How do you get rid of such a colossal carcass? Burn it, bury it, or perhaps blow it up? Light the fuse and block those ears. The decision was made to use dynamite to dispose of the whale, with the hope that seagulls and other scavengers would clean up the remaining pieces. But what followed was a scene straight out of a disaster movie. As the dynamite was detonated, the explosion sent chunks of whale blubber flying through the air, raining down on spectators and nearby cars. The force of the blast was so powerful that it shattered windows and flattened a car parked a quarter-mile away. What was meant to be a solution turned into a chaotic and smelly catastrophe. The beach was left littered with whale remains, and the seagulls were nowhere to be found. The explosive attempt to solve the whale problem had backfired spectacularly, leaving a mess that took days to clean up. This infamous event has since become a cautionary tale, reminding us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. So the next time you face a seemingly insurmountable problem, remember the tale of the whale that went kaboom. And now, with a newfound appreciation for the unexpected and the power of a stick of dynamite, let's move on from this stinky mess. As we take a break from exploding marine life, let's journey back to 1816. A year so cold, so bleak, so utterly devoid of sunshine that it became known as the year without a summer. Imagine waking up every day to a sky shrouded in a thick, ominous haze, with the sun barely peeking through. Now you might be thinking, how cold could it really be? But this wasn't just a minor inconvenience. So this wasn't your average cold snap. It was a relentless, bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep into every corner of life. This was a full-on volcanic winter caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. The eruption was so powerful that it spewed ash and sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. The ash cloud was so massive it plunged the northern hemisphere into a year-long volcanic twilight. Days were dim, and nights were even darker. Crops failed, temperatures plummeted, and people were forced to wear their wool socks in July. Food shortages became rampant, and the economy took a severe hit. It was basically the plot of every post-apocalyptic movie ever made, except instead of zombies, it was just really, really bad weather. The world was thrown into chaos, and survival became a daily struggle for many. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, politics. Specifically Roman politics in the 1st century AD, when Emperor Caligula decided to appoint his horse Incitatus as a senator. Yes, you heard that right, a horse, a senator. Now Caligula wasn't exactly known for his sound judgment. In fact, he was kind of a notorious tyrant. But even for him, this was a next-level power move. Some historians believe he did it to humiliate the Senate, while others think he might have genuinely believed his horse was qualified for the job. Either way, it's a stark reminder that political absurdity is nothing new. Time for a little mind-bending history lesson. Get ready to have your perception of time and history completely altered. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt, is a figure shrouded in legend and intrigue. Her life and reign have fascinated historians and storytellers for centuries. But here's a fact that might just blow your mind, something you probably never considered before. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the moon landing than to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yes, you heard that right. Let that sink in for a moment. It's a staggering realization that changes how we view ancient history. The woman who sailed down the Nile in a barge adorned with gold was closer to Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind than she was to the building of one of the ancient world's most iconic structures. This juxtaposition of events is truly mind-boggling. It's enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about time and history. How interconnected and surprising our past really is. Alright, back to the 19th century, where we find ourselves once again face to face with the ethical quandary of what to do with all those pesky mummies. Normal, everyday problems. Egypt in the 1800s was facing a bit of a fuel shortage. Wood was scarce and coal was expensive. So what did they do? They turned to their abundant supply of mummified ancestors, of course. Yes, you heard that right. For a brief, slightly morbid period, mummies were used as fuel for trains and steamboats. It's enough to make you wonder what those ancient Egyptians would have thought about their remains powering the Industrial Revolution. Let's take a trip to Paris, where the iconic Eiffel Tower stands as a testament to human ingenuity. But here's a fun fact you might not know: the Eiffel Tower can actually grow taller in the summer. No, it's not some bizarre botanical phenomenon. It's all thanks to thermal expansion. The iron structure expands and contracts with temperature changes, meaning it can grow up to 15 centimeters taller on a hot day. So, the next time you're strolling along the Seine, remember that the Eiffel Tower is basically doing its best impression of a giant thermometer. And finally, we arrive at the moment you've all been waiting for. The tale of Napoleon Bonaparte's humiliating defeat at the hands of an unlikely opponent, Poise, a horde of adorable bunnies. The year was 1817. Napoleon, fresh off a string of military victories, decided to celebrate with a nice, relaxing rabbit hunt. What could possibly go wrong, right? He was the emperor after all. Well, as it turns out, a lot. The rabbits, apparently mistaking the emperor for a giant carrot, decided to fight back, and they weren't messing around. These bunnies were on a mission. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of bunnies swarmed Napoleon and his men, hopping, scratching, and generally wreaking havoc. It was a sight to behold. The emperor, completely overwhelmed by this fluffy onslaught, was forced to retreat in what can only be described as the least dignified moment of his illustrious military career. Imagine the great Napoleon running from bunnies. So, there you have it. 9 bizarre, unbelievable, and yet completely true historical events that prove history is anything but boring. From emu warfare to exploding whales and bunny uprisings, the past is full of surprises, strange occurrences, and valuable lessons that remind us that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. So next time you think history is boring, just remember, even the greatest leaders can be defeated by bunnies. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to never miss more totally bizarre facts.